our top story this hour. Donald Trump is marking his first-year anniversary in the White House today. He had hoped to be spending the weekend celebrating at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, but a federal government shutdown forced him to remain in the Oval Office, where he's been trying to hash out a deal with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Well, to take a look back at what has been pretty much by all measures an extraordinary first year for the US president, we are joined here in the studio by Henri, a researcher in sustainable development at Sciences Po University here in Paris. Thank you very much for coming onto the programme today. Trump has torn up the rulebook on climate change in lots of different ways. He has been quite public, at least, about his scepticism that climate change even exists. How much does that worry climate researchers like you?
Worries them a lot. In fact, researchers at the Environmental Protection Agency and in other government organizations are very concerned about it. The advisory board of the National Parks Monument, full of experts, not just on climate, but on environmental issues in general, 9 out of 12 of them resigned or quit the board because they wouldn't be welcomed, they wouldn't be received by Scott Pruitt. So we have experts and researchers that are extremely concerned about Donald Trump's positions on environment, and we've had somewhat of a weakening of communication on climate change and scientific websites throughout the government organizations, unfortunately. It's not just researchers that are worried, however.
Now, we have seen, of course, Trump withdrew from the 2015 Paris climate change agreement, but he has suggested that he might consider going back to it if some revisions are made. Do you think that that would be a good enough step, and are you optimistic that it's going to happen?
I'm not very optimistic when it comes to Donald Trump's position on climate change nor on the Paris Agreement. I feel that when he made that announcement, he was making a political statement. He was speaking to a certain part of his base. He was making more of an announcement about what he believes should be America first throughout his presidency. And the truth is officially the United States would pull out of the Paris Agreement only 3 years from now when he deposits the notification of withdrawal, etc. So it really was more of a political statement, and I think there's no reason for him, when he takes into account what he wants to do, which is get reelected, to come back on that. However, it was a very poor decision, even from a political standpoint, because the truth is most of the American population realize that there's an urgency to fight climate change and that they shouldn't be, the United States, the worst country in terms of cooperation on climate change, which it kind of is now that it's the only one that wants to be out of the Paris Agreement.
All that said, though, it's clear that this administration is, at least to some extent, thinking about retreating from the international stage on climate change. Does that mean the rest of the world needs to step up? And is Emmanuel Macron, who's talked quite a lot about climate change, doing enough of that, do you think?
Well, Emmanuel Macron has definitely stepped in and seen an opportunity and an urgency for more leadership on climate change coming from somewhere. Paris was the host of the COP21, so France has legitimacy to do so. Emmanuel Macron, with the new breath that he's bringing to politics, realizes that he has an opportunity and legitimacy to do so as well. That doesn't mean that he's doing everything perfectly, but he's definitely trying to galvanize more stakeholders, non-state actors, and other nation states in the fight against climate change. However, there's not just Emmanuel Macron, the rest of the world that realize they need to do more. When Donald Trump made that announcement, we've had many actors in the United States that have ramped up their action on climate change, and the state of California has decided to become really an interlocutor on the international stage with its own climate summit that's coming up in the fall, and really positioning itself as the people to talk to fight climate change on the international stage. So it's a pretty interesting phenomenon that's going on, a real pushback against Donald Trump's position in the rest of the United States.
Henri from Sciences Po University, thank you so much for coming on to the programme this evening.
Thank you.